أكبر الله أكبر.
Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Welcome to the series of Friday sermon discussions brought to you by Majlis MKA UK Tarbiyyat Department on the Friday sermons delivered by Hazrat Ameerul Momineen, Hadhrat bin Aziz. I'm delighted to be joined by two esteemed, respected missionaries today. Firstly, Tayyir Ahmed Khalid Sahib. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to Tayyir Sahib.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, alhamdulillah. Really enjoyed the sermon that Huzoor delivered, continuing his series on Hazrat Ali Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu. And inshallah we'll be diving in and discussing this today. Also delighted to be joined by Qamar Ahmed Zafir Saab. So Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you, Qamar Saab.
Wa alaikum assalam, Qasim Saab. Jazakallah for having me on today.
Jazakallah to you for accepting our invitation. Qamar Saab, we find ourselves in strange times at the moment. Coronavirus pandemic has been impacted the whole of the UK and actually parts of throughout the world. Obviously, we get continued guidance from Hazrat Ameerul Momineen bin Aziz, and we've just come out of a national lockdown to a more localized tiered lockdown in the UK, and we did see as well some members of the community joining Huzoor in the Masjid Mubarak in at Jummah today. Oh, sorry, this past Jummah. So we inshallah we're starting to see stuff return back to normal. I am going to move on and ask my first question to you, Qamar Saab.
Yeah, sure.
In regards to the Friday sermon. So Huzoor bin Aziz continued on the life of Hazrat Ali Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu in this sermon. Can you explain the importance behind this series and the relevance of it for us?
You know what? I've actually been talking to a lot of people about the Friday sermons in general. These have been going over, as you know, they've been happening for quite a few years. I've been talking to people about what they think this means to them. To a lot of scholars, not only just Ahmadis, but academics as well. And in their view, this is an extremely huge achievement, because how many other imams, leaders do you know that have actually gone and done a full-fledged academic series of sermons on the 313 companions? In many ways, this is the world's first. And this is a huge achievement in the era of the fifth Khilafat. And it's really, really exciting times, because there are those people, like I said, academics, who really wanted credible sourced information about the companions, but they didn't know exactly where to look and exactly what the credible information would be. Because as you know, there is a lot of information, but not all of it might be correct. Some of it might be incorrect because of the way that it's been recorded. So His Holiness is presenting us with the information that's correct, the information that we know is going to be the absolute on point. And that's something for scholars, for academics, and for Ahmadis around the world, is something which is not only a world's first, but it's just an absolutely amazing achievement. And I'm just going to let you guys into a secret as well, because this is actually something which many departments in the Jamaat are actually beginning to recognize now. And they're actually working on things behind the scenes to actually bring these sermons to light. MKA International is also working on something very, very cool, I think. It's going to be something which will release hopefully by the end of December. It's going to be a platform which will allow all of the people, whoever wants to come and search about these 313 companions in a very, very interesting ways. So, like I said, this is something which is an extremely magnificent achievement. But beyond that, it's really important, because I remember when His Holiness started these sermons, the very first, I think, concern that was raised was that there are Muslims, forget non-Muslims, there are even Muslims who don't accept the piety and the great services of these companions and what they've done for Islam. They don't believe in them, they have doubts about them. There's various sects of Islam that completely deny their piety. So it was absolutely essential that His Holiness then went and described and portrayed these companions for truly who they were, the services that they brought towards Islam. And we can see that, and we can learn from that as well, because the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as you know, has said that his companions are like the stars, and whoever follows the stars will be rightly guided. And we know that. We also know very, very beautifully that Allah Almighty in the Holy Quran actually has said that God is pleased with them and they are pleased with Him as well. And His Holiness, when he started these series, he said it's very easy for to understand that God is pleased with them. That obviously it means that they did good works, they were obedient to him, and we understand that. But what does it mean that they were pleased with him? How can a servant be pleased with their master? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't befit them. It's not becoming of God for someone to be pleased with God. But what it actually means, and what we understood, is that they were pleased with the decree and the destiny that God had given for them. Whatever God had decreed for them, whatever God had made in their destiny, they were happy for that. If that meant martyrdom, if that meant sacrificing their wealth or their time, they were ready for that. And that's why God Almighty has specifically said this for those companions. And now we're in lockdown, Custom, so we said it right now. We've got a lot of issues where people are dealing with. His Holiness, over the past sermons, has spoken about a few incidents about how we can actually relate to them during the lockdown as well. Even with Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, which he's spoken about right now, we remember a few incidents about him, that right now is a time where we need to help one another. We need to really go out our way to help our neighbor, our friends. However, it's really important that we do it in a way that's discreet. So we shouldn't take advantage of people and push our own agenda against helping people. So we can, just make it a propaganda. For example, we know that Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, he was also known as Abu Turab. When he was getting married, he didn't have that much money with him. He wasn't a very wealthy person. And to be honest, it is very difficult to someone, even in today's age, to go and ask their friends for financial support or ask for a loan. It's kind of, for some people, it's embarrassing. But Hazrat Ali didn't have to do that. Hazrat Usman radiallahu anhu knew about his situation. He knew that he was getting married. And he also knew that he would probably need financial support. So Hazrat Ali was approached by Hazrat Usman and he was asked, do you need any help? And he didn't do it in a way that would harm him or embarrass him, but he did it in a very respectful way. What did he do? He said to Hazrat Ali that, I know you have a very nice shield in your house. I like that shield. I'd like to buy it off you for a very, very large sum of money. And Hazrat Usman offered a sum of money which he knew would cover the cost of his wedding, even though maybe the shield didn't even cost that much. He didn't go and say to Hazrat Ali, I know you're poor. I know you haven't got the money. Let me just give you some money. Here you go. And make him feel like he's becoming a burden. No, he made it into a business trade. And what's even better than that, after buying the shield, on the wedding day of Hazrat Ali, when Hazrat Usman actually came to the wedding ceremony, what did he do? That same shield that he bought from Hazrat Ali, he gifted it back to him. So in a way, he did a business trade so it doesn't harm his emotions and sentiments. But then in the end, he gave it back anyway. And he didn't tell anybody about it in a way that it would seem like he was somebody who's an amazing man and people should speak well of him. There was nothing like that. So I think in this day and age, where we help one another, we should do it in a way that's keeping the dignity and the respect of one another. And that's, again, a sign of how we can learn from these companions and why these Friday sermons are so important.
Jazakallah is such a deep, wonderful meaning you've given there, Qamar Sahib, with examples. One thing that really hit me there was when you're talking about from an academic perspective and the amount of research that would have gone into Huzoor preparing these sermons. And we know how much effort Huzoor goes into for these sermons because we've discussed it on previous discussion programs as well. But actually, the series itself has gone on for such a long time, and Huzoor spends so much time actually going into examples and details. So the amount of time and effort it would have gone to delivering the sermons, and like you said, we're holding stock by these now as recounts and stories that are close to accurate as possible, based on the historic evidence, and that is all down to the effort of Hazrat Ameerul Momineen, and inshallah we will all be rewarded for just even listening to these sermons and taking the guidance from them. So Jazakallah to you, Qamar Sahib, for that. So I'm now going to come to you, Tai Sahib, in regards to our second question. So Huzoor bin Aziz mentioned an incident at the Battle of Badr in regards to Hazrat Ali. Can you explain what happened in that incident?
So this was, of course, Battle of Badr, the first battle which took place between the Meccans, the disbelievers of Mecca, and of course the Muslims, the believers who were residing in Medina at that time. And we, as we know, as Qamar Sahib mentioned as well, these were those first 313 companions who actually were prepared to go into battle and give up everything. That preparation, that determination, that zeal which they had is what distincts them from the rest. And Hazrat Ali being, of course, as we mentioned in the last Friday sermon, as one of the first followers, one of the first people to accept Islam at a very young age, around 10 or 11. And from this age, he was at the forefront. The Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had called him his brother. And even for this battle as well, for the Mu'akhat as well, when they were moving to, when they migrated to Medina, so he had Hazrat Ali Radhiyallahu Anhu had a very strong relationship, and he had he was a figure within the army, not only because of his relationship with the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but because of who he was, his character as a person, his build. He's a fierce, strong fighter as well. And just for your interest, I actually went to Turkey, and in Istanbul they have these tabarrukat, and they say that they have Hazrat Ali's sword there. Whether or not that's true or not, but some of those things they do, and Khalifa Rabi rahimahullah has also mentioned that they do have some tabarrukat in Turkey. So Hazrat Ali's sword is actually the biggest sword I've ever seen in my life. It's humongous, like massive, and it just shows how great of a figure he was. Whether or not that's exaggerated, that's something else. But we know Hazrat Ali Radhiyallahu Anhu, he has a status in Islam, not only being the fourth Khalifa after the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but even in the battle when. For example, when the Meccans, they were facing the believers, when the disbelievers were facing the believers, I believe it was Utbah, he came up from the disbeliever side, and he came with his family of two other members. And from the Ansar, 3 people came forward and stepped forward and said, "We will fight you." And this was their tradition. The way before the battle started, 3 versus 3. And so the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he said no, that he felt that it shouldn't be the Ansar who should be the first people to go into battle, but it should be his tribe, his people of Quraysh, of Makkah, the Muhajirin. They should be at the forefront. They should be the ones who should get the blessings and the benefit of being the first to come into battle. So the Holy Prophet ﷺ said, "O people of Abu Hashim, of those who of the Quraysh, of the Makkans, of the Muhajirin, who is the one who will take this right? Who will be the one to come and fulfill this honor, this duty?" And Hazrat Ubaidah came forward, Hazrat Ali stepped forward, and it was Hazrat Hamza, the uncle of the Holy Prophet. So Hazrat Hamza, Hazrat Ali, and Hazrat Ubaidah bin Haris, these 3 companions came forward. And the Meccans, actually, the disbelievers, they asked, "Who are these people?" And then Hazrat Ubaidah said, "It is I, Hazrat Ubaidah." And he said, "Okay, that's a worthy person to fight." And he asked, "Who are the other 2 people?" And they said, "Hazrat Hamza and Hazrat Ali." And they said, "Yeah, these are worthy fighters for us to compete with." So the battle began, where these 3 Muslims were fighting the 3 disbelievers, and Hazrat Hamza, he killed the disbeliever he was fighting. Hazrat Ali killed the disbeliever that he was fighting, and Hazrat Ubaidah was fighting one of the disbelievers, and he was injured. He was struck by the sword, and he fell down. So Hazrat Hamza and Hazrat Ali, they jumped in and they killed the disbeliever, and they brought Hazrat Ubaidah back into the Muslim lines of the army. But even during this battle, the Holy Prophet ﷺ had said to both Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq and Hazrat Ali that the angel Gabriel was fighting on your right, and the angel Mikael was fighting on your left, and the angel Israfil is the angel for when it comes for fighting and battles. He was alongside you. He was fighting alongside you. So you could see that Hazrat Ali's status, his effort, his success that he had on that battlefield, particularly, was something which will always be remembered, and that is, of course, a very important part of the history of Hazrat Ali.
Jazakallah, Tari Saab, for providing that background there based on the words of Hazrat Ameerul Momineen this past Friday. We will now move on to hearing from the words of Hazrat Ameerul Momineen. As many of our regular viewers will know, we share extracts of the Friday sermon delivered by Hazrat Ameerul Momineen. So let's watch the first of those extracts now.
حضرت فاطمہ سے شادی 2 ہجری میں ہوئی. حضرت علی نے رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کی خدمت میں حضرت فاطمہ سے عقد کی درخواست کی، جسے حضور صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے بخوشی قبول فرمایا. حضرت انس بیان کرتے ہیں کہ حضرت ابوبکر اور پھر حضرت عمر دونوں نے نبی کریم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کی خدمت میں حضرت فاطمہ سے شادی کی درخواست کی، لیکن رسول کریم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم خاموش رہے اور انہیں کوئی جواب نہیں دیا. حضرت علی بیان کرتے ہیں کہ میں حضرت صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کی خدمت میں حاضر ہوا اور عرض کیا کہ آپ حضرت فاطمہ کی شادی مجھ سے کریں گے. آپ نے فرمایا کیا تمہارے پاس مہر کے لیے کچھ ہے؟ میں نے عرض کیا کہ میرا گھوڑا اور میری زرہ ہے. آپ نے فرمایا گھوڑا تو تمہارے لیے ضروری ہے، البتہ اپنے زرہ کو بیچ دو. چنانچہ میں نے اپنی زرہ کو 480 درہم میں بیچ کر حق مہر کی رقم کا انتظام کیا. ایک روایت میں ہے لوگ یہ کہتے ہیں کہ حق مہر رکھ لو تو جو ہوگا تو دیکھی جائے گی، دے دیں گے. آنسل نے فرمایا کہ حق مہر کے لیے پہلے انتظام کرو. اس کا مطلب یہ فوری حق ہے. یہ نہیں ہے کہ بعض لوگ مجھے لکھ دیتے ہیں کہ اب جب حق مہر عورتیں پہلے مطالبہ کر لیتی ہیں، حالانکہ ہم ہنسی خوشی رہ رہے ہیں، مطالبہ کر دیتی ہیں تو یہ ان کا حق ہے، یہ تو اسی کو دینا چاہیے. اور اس سے پھر جھگڑے شروع ہو جاتے ہیں اور پھر طلاق خلا کے وقت یہ تو ہونا چاہیے، حالانکہ اس کا طلاق اور خلا سے کوئی تعلق نہیں ہے حق مہر کا. بہرحال ایک روایت میں یہ ہے کہ حضرت علی نے زرہ حضرت عثمان کو بیچی. حضرت عثمان نے زرہ کی قیمت بھی ادا کر دی اور زرہ بھی واپس کر دی. حضرت علی کہتے ہیں کہ میں وہ رقم لے کر آیا اور نبی کریم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کی گود میں رکھ دی. آپ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے اس میں سے مٹھی بھر بلال کو دیتے ہوئے فرمایا اس سے کچھ خوشبو خرید لاؤ، اور کچھ لوگوں کو ارشاد فرمایا کہ حضرت فاطمہ کا جہیز تیار کرو. چنانچہ حضرت فاطمہ کے لیے ایک چارپائی، چمڑے کا ایک تکیہ جس میں کھجور کی چھال بھری ہوئی تھی، یہ سب تیار کیا گیا. ایک روایت میں ہے کہ حضرت علی سے یہ رشتہ کرتے ہوئے آپ نے فرمایا میرے رب نے مجھے ایسا کرنے کا حکم فرمایا ہے. رخصتی کے بعد حضرت صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے حضرت علی سے فرمایا جب فاطمہ تمہارے پاس آئیں تو جب تک میں نہ آؤں کوئی بات نہ کرنا. چنانچہ حضرت فاطمہ حضرت ام ایمن کے ساتھ آئیں اور گھر کے ایک حصے میں بیٹھ گئیں. میں بھی ایک طرف بیٹھ گیا. پھر رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم تشریف لائے اور فرمایا کیا میرا بھائی یہاں ہے؟ ام ایمن نے کہا کہ آپ کا بھائی، اور آپ نے اپنی بیٹی کی شادی اس سے کی ہے؟ آپ نے فرمایا ہاں. آپ اندر تشریف لائے اور حضرت فاطمہ سے کہا میرے پاس پانی لاؤ. وہ اٹھیں اور گھر رکھے ہوئے تھے، کیونکہ اس رشتے میں شادی ہو سکتی ہے، اس رشتے میں سگا بھائی نہیں ہے وہ. اور گھر میں رکھے ہوئے ایک پیالے میں پانی لائیں. آپ نے اسے لیا اور اس میں کلی کی. پھر حضرت فاطمہ نے فرمایا کہ آگے بڑھو. وہ آگے ہوئیں. آپ نے ان پر اور ان کے سر پر کچھ پانی چھڑکا اور دعا دیتے ہوئے کہا اللہم انی اعیذھا بک وذریتھا من الشیطان الرجیم. اے اللہ اس کو اور اس کی اولاد کو شیطان مردود سے تیری پناہ میں دیتا ہوں. پھر آپ نے فرمایا دوسری طرف رخ کرو. جب انہوں نے دوسری طرف رخ کیا تو آپ نے ان کے کندھوں کے درمیان پانی چھڑکا. پھر ایسا ہی حضرت علی کے ساتھ کیا. حضرت علی سے فرمایا اپنے اہل کے پاس جاؤ اللہ کے نام اور برکت کے ساتھ.
So we just watched the first extract of the Friday sermon delivered by Hazrat Ameerul Momineen. Qamar Saab, did you want to mention anything that was described by Tari Saab in the previous?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's actually quite exciting the way he mentioned it. And I was just thinking about, first of all, he said that he saw the supposed sword of Hazrat Ali, the Zulfiqar, as it's known in Turkey. I actually also went there. I can't remember which museum it was, but they did have these swords, and they claimed that they were, belonged to so-and-so. They were pretty heavy, supposedly. But we also need to remember, obviously that's a challenge. To have something, physical fitness is a challenge. Badr, the Battle of Badr was supposedly happened in the month of Ramadan, and it's disputed whether or not the commandment for fasting had been ordained at that time or not. If it was, that was another challenge on top of that, because they would have been fasting, all right? Another thing we need to remember, that where Hazrat Ali did have a sword, a lot of the companions didn't have swords. They had sticks. They were fighting with their hands. They didn't have armor. And what I can really take from this, and they were not only were that, but they were outnumbered 313 to at least 1,000 proper soldiers. I think it didn't matter that they knew how to fight. It didn't matter that they that they trusted themselves with warfare, because no sane army would go into a battle knowing that they're outnumbered that much. And not only are they outnumbered, they don't have the equipment to compare with that army. It wasn't the skill set. It wasn't the warrior's skill set that brought these people to the battlefield. It wasn't that skill set which brought them to victory. It was their faith that brought them to victory. Because if they didn't have their faith, and nobody else, if it was another army, they wouldn't even have attempted this. So what I can learn from this is that even if you are serving Islam in the modern day and age, and you feel like you don't have the right skills, you don't have the right knowledge, just go for it. Just do it. Trust God. Know that you're doing it for the sake of God, and just go for it and do it. And inshallah, you can see through the examples of these companions that inshallah you'll be successful, even if you think that the odds are against you. And I think that's what we learn from these examples of these courageous, faithful companions.
One of the many lessons that we can learn. Jazakallah Khamar for describing that for us. Dari Sahab, I'm going to stick with you in regards to our next question. Huzoor commented that just as the Holy Prophet Muhammad instructed that the dowry should be arranged to Hazrat Ali, it should be understood that the dowry is the right of the bride and should always be given as a general principle to all Muslims. Can you tell us more about this and how we should implement this in our lives once marriages take place?
So, of course, marriage is one of the, in a way, something which is part and parcel of life. And with that, Muslim men, they have to give dowries to their spouses, to their wives. If we look at the example of what Hazrat Ali who did, when he asked for the hand of Hazrat Fatima, the Holy Prophet asked him, do you have anything to give in dowry? And he said that he had a horse and a coat of armor, his coat of armor that he had. And the Holy Prophet said that, look, you need to keep your horse because that's beneficial, you need it. But you should sell your armor and keep that and use that as your hakmeh. But when he actually gave that armor then to the Holy Prophet, the Holy Prophet passed it to Hazrat Umar to sell. And it was over 400 dirham, I believe, which was received from the armor. But Hazrat Umar, he gave the armor back as well. And that the hakmed which was given from selling that dowry, from selling the armor, that was actually used to help prepare for the wedding as well. And it was used for the hakmed as well. And as Kamar mentioned earlier on, that when Hazrat Usman he bought that shield as well, all of these things helped in the preparation of this marriage. And a lot of the companions had said, Hazrat Aisha was also narrated that this was the best walima which ever happened, the best of weddings which ever happened, because it was so simple. And of course, with the continuous blessing and the presence of the Holy Prophet throughout this whole period of the marriage was something which, of course, is unimaginable for us. But for them, the Holy Prophet to prepare everything, to guide them on each occasion, it was something which was, of course, amazing to listen to when His Holiness was mentioning this yesterday. But the hakmed as well. The thing is, in this day and age, the hakmed is something which a lot of people feel that the hakmed is something which should be given, or it is something which is just unspoken of. It's agreed, but if we give it or not, I mean, if some people say that, look, let's say if I've been married for 10 years, in the past 10 years, I've spent thousands of pounds on my wife. That's the hakmed. That's not the case. The hakmed is something that you have to give at the time of the wedding. And this is what we understand from narrations, that at the time of the wedding, give it. And Huzoor was actually mentioned in another place that there's that because wives don't supposedly ask for it because they're shy, or they have that humility, they don't want to ask, okay, give me the hakmed. His Holiness Huzoor said that it is the duty, the responsibility of the husbands to give it then, to give it straight away. And he said, give it and see whether they refuse to take it. They will take it straight away, because this is their right. So, and of course, the hakmed, the reason why the hakmed is being given in Islam as a right for the women is if, God forbid, something is to happen with the marriage is to break up, then that is that money that she can use until she can for her to be stable. Whether if she has children, whether she is living somewhere else, whatever the situation may be, that hakmeh should be a worthy amount enough for her to be able to stand on her own 2 feet, on her own 2 feet. So that's why the hakmeh is something which, as we mentioned, that some people only give it in the time of divorce or separations. But that's not the case. That's not what it should be like. It should be given at the beginning. It should be given right from the onset, so that you can start your marriage with this trust that you've given your dowry, you've given your hakmeh, and you can start your lives together. Not wait for like 20 years down the line and she asks for it and you haven't got it. Give it straight away. That's why marriages, when you start your marriage, you have to be prepared. Financially be prepared to give that hakmeh as well in the beginning. And this is, of course, an injunction and a commandment which we have to do. Also, you want to add anything on this?
I mean, I think it's really interesting because in this day and age, you get a lot of people who will be like, you know what, I can't afford that right now. Some people might have a lower dowry. Some people might have a higher dowry. I think where in Islam, yes, there is the ideal situation. There's also times of ease. It also allows ease. So where absolutely, you have to, if you can, you should give it straight away. But if you can't, then of course Islam says that there are ways out, that you can work around it. It's known as Mahri Muajjal, and then there's Mahri Muattal as well, where you can give it a bit later. But that means that you should at least attempt to pay it in an installment that you can bear. But doesn't mean that you should leave it completely hanging. And we know that this is really important because nowadays a lot of relationships are breaking, and it's because people are scared to commit to something. It's simple as that. You'll get people answering left, right, center. I don't want to get married because of this. I don't want to get married because of that. Most people just don't want to commit to one single person. And when they are, in relationships which are not marriage, outside of marriage, and they're breaking, and they're, things are happening. They're happening, then they're breaking because people are not afraid to break those relationships. People don't care if they break up with their so-called girlfriends or boyfriends because they don't have to bear any circumstances or any damage of that. Even in British law now, we see to some extent that after marriage, if someone breaks that marriage, then the share of the wealth, the household, the land, it gets split. And that's there to make someone think twice before they give up on a relationship. That's why the dowry is there as well. And that's why it's really important. Because at the end of the day, nobody wants their sons and daughters to just be left in broken relationships, broken families. And the point of this dowry is there to establish and secure the fact that that doesn't happen. So that's really, really important. You mentioned about this blessed walima, that it was a most amazing walima. It was the most simple walima. And we can see that even in this day and age where we're lucky, because a lot of us, His Holiness gives us the opportunities and many a time to for us to be in this presence with our own walimas, our own weddings as well. He gives us that time and he attends them as well. And some people might question that, look, we see in the time of Hazrat Ali, there was just a very simple walima, a few people attended. Why do we have these extravagant weddings, hundreds of participants coming these days? What's the point of that? Well, it's really important because this is what community is based upon as well. Yes, they don't have to be extravagant in nature, but we should try to invite people as much as we can. Because there could be people who feel like they're disconnected from the community. There could be people who have just become Muslim, for example. There could be those who are not often invited to gatherings. They might feel left out. So we should go out of our way to invite these people in our times of happiness so that they also feel happy. They also feel the sense of brotherhood and sisterhood as well. So that means that there shouldn't be really an accusation on this in the first place. The intentions are exactly how we just mentioned. This is how the essence of why these weddings happen like this.
It's been a long time, given the coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah,
I've been invited to a wedding, Qamar Saab, and now you've made me to miss that fact. Something that I didn't think I was missing. I'm now missing it after you've just enlightened us on the social aspect of those gatherings as well. So, Jazakallah for that. We will now move on to the second extract of the Friday sermon delivered by Hazrat Ameerul Momineen. So let's watch that extract now.
ये भी जिक्र चल रहा है, आइंदा भी होगा इंशाअल्लाह ताला। आजकल जो पाकिस्तान में हालात हैं मज़ीद सख्त होते चले जा रहे हैं। बाज़ अफसरान जो हैं हुकूमती मौलवी के पीछे चल के और उनके साथ गठजोड़ करके हमें जिस हद तक नुकसान पहुंचा सकते हैं पहुंचाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। इसलिए ख़ास तौर पर दुआएं करें। और रब्बा के अहमदी भी, पाकिस्तान में रहने दूसरे शहरों में बसने वाले अहमदी भी ہر جگہ اللہ تعالیٰ ان کو اپنی حفاظت میں رکھے اور ان کے شر سے محفوظ رکھے، اور ان کے منصوبے جو نہایت بھیانک منصوبے اور خطرناک منصوبے ہیں ان سے بچا کے رکھے، اور ان لوگوں کی اب پکڑ کے جلد سامان فرمائے۔ اس کے بعد میں جمعہ بعض جنازہ غائب بھی پڑھاؤں گا، ان کے بارے میں کچھ ذکر کر دیتا ہوں مختصر۔ پہلا ذکر ہے مکرم کمانڈر چودھری محمد اسلم صاحب کا، جو کینیڈا کے تھے، 2 نومبر 2020 کو وفات پا گئے، انا للہ و انا الیہ راجعون۔ کمانڈر صاحب 1929 میں پیدا ہوئے تھے گجرانوالے میں۔ گجرانوالہ سے انہوں نے میٹرک کیا اور فرسٹ پوزیشن لی، پھر تعلیم اسلام کالج اور ایف سی کالج گورنمنٹس سے ایف ایس سی کی، گورنمنٹ کالج لاہور سے بی ایس سی کیا، پنجاب یونیورسٹیز میں ڈاکٹر عبدالسلام صاحب کی سرپرستی میں فزکس میں ایم ایس سی کرنے کی توفیق پائی۔ 1948 میں فرقان فورس میں بھرتی ہو کر آزاد کشمیر میں متعین ہوئے، جہاں انہیں مجاہد کشمیر کے سرٹیفکیٹ اور آزادی کشمیر کے تمغے سے نوازا گیا۔ 1955 میں مرحوم پاکستان نیوی میں بھرتی ہوئے، جہاں انہیں پاکستان نیول اکیڈمی بطور ڈائریکٹر آف اسٹڈیز کوہارٹ میں ڈپٹی پریزیڈنٹ آف انٹر سروسز سلیکشن بورڈ، نیول ہیڈ کوارٹر اسلام آباد میں بطور ڈپٹی ڈائریکٹر نیول ایجوکیشنل سروسز وغیرہ کلیدی عہدوں پر خدمت کی توفیق ملی۔ مرحوم موصوف کو ایجوکیشنل سیکٹر میں نیوی کے نئے اسکول اور کالجز کھولنے کی منصوبہ بندی کرنے کی بھی، اور نیز بحریہ یونیورسٹی کے قیام کی بھی میں بنیادی کردار ادا کرنے کی توفیق ملی۔ پاکستان نیوی سے ریٹائر ہونے کے بعد کینیڈا سے تشریف لے گئے اور 1 سال مشن ہاؤس ٹورنٹو میں وقف عارضی کیا، جس کے بعد 1993 میں وقف بعد ریٹائرمنٹ کی درخواست کی، جسے حضرت مسیح رابع نے قبول فرمایا، اور ان کی خدمات جو ہیں جماعت کی بھی یہ 28 سالوں پر محیط ہیں۔ اس دوران مرحوم کو بطور سیکرٹری جدات، سیکرٹری رشتہ ناطہ، ایڈیشنل سیکرٹری مشن ہاؤس اور معاون ہومیوپیتھی کلینک وغیرہ کی خدمت کی توفیق ملی۔ مرحوم نہایت منکسر نرم گفتار تھے، منکسر مزاج تھے، ہر کسی شفقت سے پیش آتے تھے، نمازوں کی پابندی کرنے والے، خلافت سے کے ساتھ والہانہ تعلق اور عشق رکھنے والے، زندگی وقف کرنے کے بعد اپنا ہر لمحہ جماعت کی خدمت میں گزارنے کی بھرپور کوشش کرتے۔ گزشتہ کچھ عرصے سے بہت بیمار تھے، تاہم جب بھی طبیعت سنبھلتی فوراً مشن ہاؤس آ جاتے اور آخر دم تک خدمت دین میں سرگرم عمل رہے۔ پسماندگان میں ان کی اہلیہ اور 3 بیٹے ہیں۔ اللہ تعالیٰ ان سب کو اللہ تعالیٰ مرحوم کو مغفرت الرحم کو سلوک فرمائے اور ان کی نیکیاں ان کی اولاد میں جاری فرمائے۔
We just watched the second extract of the Friday sermon delivered by Hazrat Ameerul Momineen, Ta'ala bin Nasir Aziz, in which he talked about the political situation in Pakistan, and then moved on to some of the deceased members of the Jamaat that he provided some background on. The first of whom was Commander Chaudhry Muhammad Aslam Sahib that Huzoor just mentioned. Commander Sahib, I'm now going to come to you. That as we just heard, Huzoor Hazrat bin Nasir Aziz said that he would offer the funeral prayers in absentia of some of the Jamaat members. Obviously, Commander Sahib was one of them. What is the significance of Huzoor mentioning these members?
I think it's really, really important. And of course, His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, has his own wisdom and reasoning behind why he does it. But I think we look at it generally speaking, then we know that His Holiness is currently speaking about the 313 companions. And they had their sacrifices and they did their role for Islam and they served the way that they did. But that happened 15 to 1400 years ago. How can we relate to that in this day and age? And I think one of the things that we can learn from when Huzoor does relate about these people who have passed away is their services in this modern day and age and how they were able to carry on the services of Islam, but in an age and in a time which we can relate to. And His Holiness doesn't just speak about elderly people. Even in the sermon that we just listened to, yes, he spoke about the respected model Commander Sahib, who was aged, but he also spoke about a youngster as well, and he also spoke about not only men but also women as well. So people from all over the spectrum can see before themselves different individuals who are Muslim, who are living in today's society, How did they serve Islam? And we can see what they did. Some of them went off into, they didn't only serve Islam, they didn't only study in physics and science, but they also served in the navy, in the military. But at the same time, balancing all of these things, they were also able to give time to the Jamaat. Whether it was secretary Nishtanata, whether it was secretary in the different halkas and the different armlers that they served in, they were able to give up this time, all while maintaining their day job. That's really, really important to know. We learned about the Khadim as well. That despite having to go to school, and despite having all the extracurricular activities that a normal young boy would have, the moment the Zaim or the Qaid or the Sadr would call him for duty, call him for service, everything else was off the scale. Everything else was off the table. And he would go, not for an hour, not for 2 hours, but at times for days at a time, and forget about everything else. And that's really what today's sacrifice is all about. Because yes, the 313 companions, many of them in the future, and they gave their lives for Islam. Literally, they died. They passed away. We see that His Holiness has many a time spoken about people in their absentia who have been martyred as well. They actually literally gave their lives for Islam. So His Holiness is showing that there are people in this day and age who have done that as well. But beyond that, there are people who are giving their time, they're giving up their wealth, and these are the people who we are seeing before us today as well. We can see that His Holiness has spoken at length about different types of people who passed away. The martyrs, we remember years back as well, who in the Lahore attacks. We remember our respected brother, Raza Ahmed, who was our late student of Jamia Ahmadiyya UK, how His Holiness showed to us that he was a model for the youth. And it's exactly that. They are models for the way that we can now live our lives. How they sacrifice their time, how they sacrifice their wealth and their honor, and how we can replicate that as well. So this is really, really important for us today to do that. That's obviously one aspect of it as well. But I think more to it is that when we do hear about all of these people, history is only ever recorded so that, number one, either we don't repeat it or that we can replicate it. And of course, in this case, it's about the latter, that we try and actually replicate what they did. But also, we also remember them in their prayers as well, because of course, these are the deceased. These are those who have passed away. And the Prophet ﷺ was also said that for the next 40 days, the soul and the body have some sort of relationship. And it is in this time, in the very time that they passed away, that we should intensify in our prayers for their elevation in status, for their forgiveness, and for general prayers for them, but also for the patience and forbearance of their family as well. So these are times where the community comes together, and we come together in times of happiness and in times of sadness. And it's really beautiful to see that His Holiness gives time to people from all across the world, whether they are in Africa, whether they're in Asia, in Europe. When he narrates their incidents and their lives, it feels like we're just one big family. And it doesn't matter where we were from, but we had one thing in common. That was our belief in God, our belief in Ahmadiyyat and the Prophet ﷺ. And it just gives you a sense of belonging, a sense of who you are. And you begin to remember that this is what we stand for. And we need to try and live up to the standards of our forefathers and those who were before us and those who have just, of course, passed away.
And it leads back to that sense of community that you mentioned before. And ultimately, the leader of that community in our present day and age is Hazrat Ameerul Momineen, who mentions different members of the Jamaat that have passed away. In this discussion program, we haven't gone into detail on each of the members. And the way for us to really honor those is to actually hear the words of Hazrat Ameerul Momineen himself. And as we've said before to people, that this discussion program is in no way, shape or form a substitute for the Friday sermon itself. We urge all the viewers to go back and listen to the Friday sermon, to ponder over its meanings, and to actually get those role models and those examples that Huzoor has given on all the members that have recently passed away. That brings us to the close in respect of this program. I would like to say Jazakallah to both of you, Tahir Saab and Qamar Zafar Saab, in regards to providing some details on the recent Friday sermon delivered by Hazrat Ameerul Momineen. From my perspective, we will close it there. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.